So the warrior has been a staple tanking class in Final Fantasy XIV for a very, very long time. Actually, that might be an understatement of the millennium. But when Shadowbringers came, there was a whole lot of changes to not just the warrior and just how its actions worked, but also to tanking in general. One of the biggest and most prominent changes being that enmity was no longer going to impact you quite as much. Such as if I hover over Defiance right now, which is a tank stance, and for those who don't know what a tank stance is, it basically increases the chance that or the amount that a monster will aggro onto. It increases your enmity generation by a significant amount. This used to be a ability that would actually really lower your damage by quite a significant margin. And so now that obviously has been stripped away, and likewise you don't see things like the Paladin used to have Shield Oath, which it still has, and it used to have an alternative ability called Sword Oath, which would be its like DPS stance. So there's been a lot of changes that way. But one thing that I've really felt as someone who has played the warrior for a very long time is that the warrior, in my humble opinion, has gotten kind of the short end of the stick in a lot of ways. And I really think that that is quite unfortunate, if I'm being super honest. I think that whenever you make a video like this, that it's very important to state from the get-go that this comes from a place of love and from genuinely wanting to see things improve, rather than a place of critique or harsh criticism and just bashing, I should say. Like, this isn't to bash the warrior or say, oh, if you play warrior you're bad and you should feel bad, because no, I loved the warrior for many years, and recently, unfortunately, I have very much shied away from it. Such as if you look at some of my older videos footage, especially in raid footage, you would definitely see that I played Gunbreaker. I didn't play Warrior. I honestly just, because the issues I'm going to raise through this video, moved away, honestly. And so this video is just hope to raise awareness and just bring up the conversation, because I think the most important thing when there is issues with something that you really love is that you need to bring up the conversation and you need to at least start it. And mind you, I don't know how far it'll go or not go, knowing me, it won't go anywhere, but it's still something where I want to talk about it because it is still bugging me. So this is actually going to be re-recording number 3, I think, 3 or 4, because some of my points, I belabored the point to the point where it was literally an hour-long video, and so I'm going to try and keep things as tight and concise as possible. And so likewise, I am just going to be recording this with direct game footage rather than doing all this fancy editing here, there, this point, that point. I think that the points can be conveyed much simpler than that. So with the warrior, we have a 1-2-3 combo of heavy swing into maim, and then we can either do Storm's Path or Storm's Eye. Storm's Path is generally what you're going to go for everything other than Storm's Eye to apply a 10% damage buff to yourself, which is the Storm's Eye buff here that I'm hovering over with on my cursor right now. This lasts 30 seconds and is very important because 10% damage is, especially in Final Fantasy XIV terms, very, very significant. This is a buff that you really, really do need to maintain on yourself all the time. And so the trick of this is 1, 2, 3 to Storm's Eye, or 1, 2, and now 3, and now we have Storm's Path. So the main difference between Storm's Eye and Storm's Path is that Storm's Path will give you 20 Beast Gauge, where Storm's Eye will give you 10, and Beast Gauge is used to spend on abilities such as this iconic Fell Cleave ability. And likewise, more Fell Cleaves is always a great thing. We love Fell Cleave. I love Fell Cleave. I love the Fell Cleave memes. But the issue is that this isn't even complicated gameplay. This is not adding depth to my gameplay. This is honestly, in my opinion, frustrating. Because I go 1, 2, and now I do Storm's Path or Storm's Eye. And just being super honest, that is not that engaging. It is almost to the point where it's No, I'm just gonna say it. It is not adding anything to but frustration for me. So I'm gonna just enter my house, just reset the dummy, and I'm gonna just show you some of the other classes. So we are going to be popping onto Gunbreaker, and my inventory is a complete mess, so good luck to me on that. So I'm just gonna change it like this. But look at this ability. I'll bring it up on here. This might be easier to see. It's not Bowshock. Where was it? I can't remember exactly which level that we get it. Ah, here we do, level 2 actually. So this is No Mercy, and it increases your damage dealt by 20% for 20 seconds. And so is it something like the Warriors where you can keep it up all the time? No. But you know what? Let's see how hard this is to activate. Okay, now let's go to the Paladin. Fight or Flight. Also get it level 2. I'm sorry, it's been so long since I've been that low level. I forgot you got that early. But how hard is this to use? Okay, and so now let's do Dark Knight. I actually have to go outside of my house for this one. Yeah, and trust me, sorry, I know that this is, maybe I could have edited this a bit further, but I want to just show the live gameplay of it too. So we have an ability called Edge of Shadow, which increases your damage dealt by 10% for 30 seconds. And I want to see how easy or difficult is this to use. What if we needed to use it again? Or again? And that is my point. It's like every single other tank has some reasonable way of getting it. Let's even look at this. Like with the Dark Knight, you also get Flood of Shadow. I'm actually going to go back to that training dummy. And so Flood of Shadow does AoE damage. So the difference between Edge and Flood is Edge of Shadow single target, Flood of Shadow is AoE. And see, that refreshed the duration of the buff. And actually this gets into another point that I'm going to get into very shortly after, but every single tank in this game has very easy access to their damage buff other than the Warrior. Like, we're gonna go back to the Warrior, and sorry, you can even see I'm missing my gloves. My gosh, I am a hot mess right now. But this Warrior requires 1, 2, 3 for Storm's Eye. This is so difficult, and now I'm going to say why it's difficult. So let's say that we're going into an AoE situation. Let's say that this training dummy here is an AoE. And let's say that we have like a collection of like 10 of these training dummies here. So I'm going to do Overpower, Mithril Tempest. Because logically, Overpower does 130 potency to all enemies in a cone in front of you. And then this one does 200 to all enemies around you. And so, likewise, do you want to really lose 130 potency multiplied by, say, 10? That is going to be 1,130 potency for 10. And yes, I know that that's not that hard of math. That's why I chose that example before anyone comes for me in the comments. But you have the choice to either do 1,130 potency, or you can do 200 potency, and so that is literally less than 1/5 in that situation. Likewise, of course, if you're at like a pack of like 2 mobs, I mean technically that is still more potency, but you get more potency from Maim and then go into Storm's Path or Storm's Eye. So with like packs of 2 mobs, don't feel so bad. But when we're talking about 3 or more mobs, it is always going to be pretty much better to do Overpower. And so even when you're initially pulling, you have the effect that you are doing 10% less damage, because the way that this kit is that it basically depends on you having this 10% damage buff on you at all times. And likewise, I don't have it at this point. Like if I'm just engaging in AoE like this, this doesn't actually give me that buff. And so when I go 1, 2, 3, and note that even when you're doing an AoE pull in a dungeon, like let's say that you're doing like Expert Roulette here. Whoops. Like, oh, it's even Adventure and Need DPS, interesting. But, sorry. But you are the tank when you're in this thing. There's a reason. You put on your tank stance and you are going in there, and your job is to, as my tank guide, my first tank guide video did, is to not only like hold the mobs, but to also facilitate the proper amount of damage. You need to be holding them in the correct positions. You need to be using your cooldowns. You need to be making sure that you are like making basically you facilitate the DPS and the healer to destroy things as you're also destroying things. And so if you're starting to just do an AoE pull with this and like then Storm's Eye without doing your AoE, you're probably not even going to hold the mobs. I'm just going to be honest. Like if you have a black mage that is very well geared, like let's say that they're best in slot and they're going ham, you're not going to hold it if you just go in once with an overpower and then you start doing a 1-2-4 in my hotbars at least. It's not going to hold the aggro. I have been there so many times. It's not going to hold the aggro if they're good. So that is incredibly frustrating. And then that gets into another point, which is this is the beast gauge. And so I'm going to swap back to the Dark Knight. Actually, let me find another training dummy. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. And so that's like 7.5 seconds wasted just to get that. So that's why that seems delayed. But look here. We have this little buff icon here. And this is what tells you that your damage is increased. And that's for the warrior. We have the beast gauge here, which tells you how much charge you basically have to do basically Fell Cleave or Upheaval. So, how to lose aggro. So now if I go to my Dark Knight, wherever I put it, here, then I go and I'm going to smack this dummy. And so I'm just going to use Edge of Shadow and then Flood of Shadow, and then that. So this icon here, this HUD element right here, this Darkside gauge here, this thing, that tells you how long your buff lasts. You don't need to look for some little icon here. And so when it comes even to the warrior versus the Dark Knight is noticeably more polished. Like you can see, oh, I'm at 37, 36, 35, and then bam. And so basically everything to do with this buff is kind of less refined. I mean, could you make the argument that, oh, the Gunbreaker and the Paladin just have like basic cooldowns? Yes, but there is also a difference with the Gunbreaker and the Paladin versus the Dark Knight and the Warrior. The Dark Knight and the Warrior are expected to keep up their 10% damage buffs at all times, whereas with, say, the Gunbreaker, I'm just gonna swap to it this way because my inventory is a mess. This one, this No Mercy buff, lasts 20 seconds and is on a recast timer of 60 seconds. And so essentially what you have at this point is that this buff here is not always expected to be there, and it's not a permanent 100% uptime thing that you need to keep track of. Whereas with the Warrior, it absolutely 100% is, and if you lose that 10% damage buff, you are going to see something that could have, say, been like a 90th parse, just tank. Because 10% damage reflects very, very harshly in this game. And so, likewise, that is issues that I absolutely have with that buff. But I want to emphasize, wherever I put it, there, is that 1, 2, 3, so Heavy Swing, Maim, Storm's Path, Heavy Swing, Maim, Storm's Eye. That's not that engaging of gameplay. That is literally 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I mean, the difference is that you click a 4, but at the same point in time, that is, like, if we even compare it to the closest relative, which is the Dark Knight here, it's just like they have their 1, 2, 3. Absolutely, absolutely. I 1000% agree with that. So, but the difference is this 1, 2, 3 is focused on this, but this one can go like that, and then it's an off global cooldown, which, you know what, at least is a bit cooler. Like if you are, say, on the Dark Knight and you're looking to just dump your MP, that is a very viable way to do it. Like if you're just not caring to use the Blackest Night for whatever reason, let's say for whatever reason, because I know that I'm going to have some of my subscribers be like, what do you mean you're not using? I know, I'm acknowledging it, but it basically has a little bit more to it. But we also, when we do something like that, is look at how we have Siphon Strike here. And so this has a combo bonus of it restores your own HP by a cure potency of 300, and it increases the blood gauge by 20. And so the blood gauge is essentially, for all intents and purposes, let's get a little bit here. Kind of like the equivalent to a Felcleave. So blood spiller you can think of as almost being the same as the Felcleave. I mean, I'm simplifying it, I know, but forgive me. But with the warrior, let me bring it up here. Storm's Eye, on the other hand, only increases the beast gauge by 10, and Storm's Path increases it by 20, but Storm's Path is also the one that increases your health or restores your HP by 250. So even based on that, it is even restoring less HP than the Dark Knight, interestingly enough, in its 1-2-3 combo. So that is actually something weird to note. Is 50 potency gonna kill you? Probably not, but you need to think in the course of a 10-minute raid fight where you're going around that raid, and so you do a 1-2-3 combo of 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, so 2, 5, 7.5 seconds. 7.5 seconds, how many times are you going to have that during a 10-second fight when basically this 1-2-3 is what you're spamming? I mean, yes, is there Felcleave spam? Absolutely, I will get into that later, but it is going to be something that you essentially spam, and so that in my humble opinion, should always be kept in mind that 50 potency, is it going to be big on its own? No, but it is death by 1,000 cuts. And so, yeah, even if you think about it, 10 of those is going to be 500 potency of healing that's just lost over time. And I mean, it's kind of like auto attacks on a boss eventually do add up to something. They're not much on their own, but I totally digress. The main thing that I want to kind of get out of that is just like, it's just not that engaging to go 1-2. Okay, I have a different button. It pales in comparison to something like the Paladin, and I am going to probably do the jankiest where's the striking dummy opener ever. It's not even going to be an opener. I'm just gonna whack this thing, and it's just like, even with this, it's just like you have that boom, 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 and this is, for the record, not the proper opener for a Paladin. But it's like, this has a whole lot of abilities in it that are really cool. And even likewise, you can see that I have Intervene here. And so likewise, it's already just based on this. And you can see we're even going into like things like Atonement and that. And I messed up my rotation. Whoopsie poopsie, but... And then like we go into Holy Spirit spam. And it's just like, you cannot in good faith tell me that this is the same as the Warriors. Like that was all over the place. Like, we were incorporating a whole lot of skills, and it's just like, Goring Blade's technically the same as the fine, but Goring Blade is actually doing a damage over time effect, as well as Royal Authority actually goes into Atonement, as well as you're weaving in Circle of Scorn. But I mean, we could nitpick at that all day, but in my humble opinion, that's not just adding enough. That's just not adding enough actual gameplay for me. And so, kind of my next point that I want to talk about is going to be... Sorry there, I had to cut away for a bit. But the next thing that I want to talk about is, in my opinion, a very big issue, because... like, let's pull up this. Like, all of this content in this duty roulette, which most of us do much more frequently than we would do something like an ultimate tier raid with a highly organized party. Things like this, you're generally going to not have a coordinated group. Even things like if you go to the party finder and if you pull up things like high-end duty, most of these groups are literally just... like, they're good groups, but they are groups that haven't like formed a particular strategy with someone. And I think that the Warrior, before I even get into it, can shine absolutely in very skillful planned play. But in everything else, I think that the Warrior falls extremely far short because of the concept of overhealing. And so for someone who's not super duper familiar with overhealing, basically, let's say that I pop Thrill of Battle, and let's say, and it just said 29418. I can say why that's not overhealing, because you actually raised your maximum HP. But let's talk about Equilibrium. That didn't raise my max HP, and 30,469 healing on a 60-second cooldown, that just went to waste. And everyone's just like, haha, you're running around houses, of course it went to waste. Okay, let's take another example. Oh crap, I used that. Nope. Oh, I can't even. Yeah, that's another thing. We're gonna get into that soon. But let's say that Nascent Flash was up, and let's say that all of those healed for like 15k. And trust me, we'll get into that annoyance soon. But basically, all of that healing, if we already had capped off health, would be what we call overhealing. It's healing that is essentially wasted. And so things like that Equilibrium ability, it's just like we would have wasted that. No, we quite literally did waste it. And so, or actually, yeah, that example will work. I don't need to elaborate it further. So let's say that you have a healer, really attentive, keeps your HP 100%. That was just wasted. And so now we have a 60-second cooldown that was 100% useless, because you know what, if you are a healer and you are going through content with tanks that you don't know, if you see a tank buster, your instinct is to go, say, to like Scholar and just be like, oh, I need to like put on like Excog, I need to put on like maybe even an Adlo, maybe I need even a Fairy Shield, maybe I do Whispering Dawn, maybe I go really crazy and I want Catalyze and I do this. So I get both Galvanize and Catalyze. Like, you can go crazy with it. But like after the tank buster, you do something like, oh, I want emergency tactics, swift cast Adlo for burst healing. And likewise, my gear is severely outdated on that, so ignore the horrible numbers. But the fact is, if I don't know a tank, I'm going to assume that I need to go ham, and I don't care if it's a warrior, because I have been bitten, especially this expansion, so many times as a healer. Like, I remember at the start of the expansion when I was like spamming Titania on like White Mage, it was so frustrating because some warriors were using abilities correctly, but sometimes they didn't have it, and it was just so inconsistent sometimes that I basically gave up on not healing them and letting them do their overhealing. And that's something that most healers that I've talked to don't even pay attention to. They're just like, oh, if I see a tank buster coming on like my focus target bar, like let's say I'm like focus target and then I see a Casper going da 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 tank buster da na no 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 no, I'm gonna prepare to heal you. I don't, but for me, I tried to trust the warrior would do it to avoid overhealing and get more DPS. And likewise, my parses were pretty good for it. But sometimes the tank would go the way of... And so that was a bit of a heartbreaking situation. So what you have with all these abilities, and likewise, I'm thinking back to my last recording that I'm trying to reel back right now, is you have the concept of overhealing. If a healer trusts you and knows you know what you're doing, and you have like really good communication, like you're with a static in like ultimate tier raid progression, like not even savage raids, because I know so many people that have cleared like savage, even my own groups. It's just like we don't care specifically about like, oh, did you use Thrill of Battle Equilibrium at this exact point of time? We don't get into that level of nitty gritty. But if you're doing like ultimate tier content where you do need to do that, okay, then we're talking about a different playing field. But for everything else, that's gonna usually equal a whole lot of overhealing. Like using Nascent Flash, which I can't even use here, which I'll get into in a bit, in a dungeon, and then being like, oh yeah, I'm gonna pop in a release and just bam, AoE, bam, AoE, bam, AoE, bam. Or you could even spam charge during that. Don't waste it. Like, get everything you can get out, and then bam. Like, the healing from Nascent Flash feels so good. Like, I can say that, like, I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm living my best life when I'm just, I get hyped, I get into it, I love that. And I think that a lot of other people who play Warrior see that and feel the same, at least initially, because then I can look back and let's say that I just queued for Expert, but just because I need to cap out all my tomestones, and that I was with a white mage that was just spamming Cure 2 over and over and over again. Well, instantly, that Nascent flash is wasted, and then you're just going to go for something like Raw Intuition, which, for the record, is going to just be on 25-second cooldown. It's going to reduce your damage taken by 20%. And these share a recast timer, so you can choose one or the other. And so, I mean, is there an option? Yes, for that. But other things like Thrill of Battle and Equilibrium, those ones aren't so much of an option. And I should say one other thing is that the need to use Raw Intuition over Nascent Flash, I feel, is a very painful gut punch. I think that it's something that's really painful because you think about a class fantasy of a warrior and immediately you're drawn to, oh, this is like this super barbarian who's like gonna go or like whatever. Someone's gonna make a meme with that for sure, but I mean, don't lie to me and tell me that most warrior players haven't gone like they have but it's like, just to go and use Raw Intuition, it makes me immediately go like, oh my god, why am I even playing this? I should just go Gunbreaker, where I can just go here and then I use Heart of Stone, and then people can be like, well, that's an extra 5%, and I'm like, sure, okay, whatever. But mind you, isn't Warriors a shorter duration? 1 second shorter. Nothing. But basically, in effect, it's like, I don't know, when I go to play the warrior, it's like I'm more there for, like, obviously the fantasy that the class abilities are really enabling. And so, I mean, is that an option? Yeah. But generally speaking, in my experience, it's like, if you're going warrior, it's like you want to really, or you're picking any tank. If you're picking any tank, like let's go to the Dark Knight. Like, when I'm the Dark Knight and I'm preparing for a tank buster, my instant instinct is the Blackest Night paired with Dark Mind. And so, for those that don't know, Blackest Night applies a huge shield to you. Dark Mind reduces magic vulnerability by 20%. And likewise, super low cooldown, and then just BAM! And then you can eat it. And another thing that you can even do is you can do Blackest Night, Darkest Mind with Shadow Wall. And so that's 30%. And you'll be hard pressed to find many tank busters in normal gameplay that will actually break through that. It's actually quite nice. But yeah, essentially, when you pick a tank, you're picking it for its particular utilities. And you know what, if I'm just playing warrior and I'm not using the kit of a warrior and the supposed perks that it should bring, I feel kind of like, why did I pick a warrior? And I mean, if many people can just be like, oh, well, I like Fell Cleave spam, and absolutely, I love Fell Cleave spam. It's just like, heck, let's even get a few Fell Cleaves out here right now. But the main thing is that essentially I need to bring up that just like warrior, its primary class fantasy of being able to heal and do all this is really, really, really prohibitive in most gameplay, because it's just like with Nascent Flash, Thrill of Battle, Equilibrium, you're going to overheal nauseating amounts, especially with Thrill of Battle. I've noticed, even in my own healing, even trying to keep track of it, Thrill of Battle increases the amount of healing that someone takes by 20% for 10 seconds, or the warrior themselves, sorry. I was getting it confused with Nature's Mine from Bard. Let's bring that up here, actually, since I mentioned it. So Nature's Mine here, it increases HP recovery via healing actions for a party member or self by 20%. And note that this lasts 5 seconds longer than Thrill of Battle, and I mean, oh, is the world ending 5 seconds? No. But what I can say is that when I have taken the Bard for its utility is that I have talked to many different healers, and I've rated with, my god, probably like, I don't even know how many, like at least 50 different healers or something like that. Like, they say that they don't notice it, because most healers are gonna be like, I anticipate this tank with this much HP bar is going to need this many cure 2s or whatever's into them. And so it's not necessarily even the best thing to be trying to like keep track of. I think ending this section, the best analogy would be, and you can Google this for sure, is just the frustration healers feel. So let's say that I am going against the striking dummy and I'm like, rah. And then the striking dummy uses a tank buster. Oh no, so my gut instinct is to heal myself. And likewise, we see Clemency is going to be a just boom, burst of heal. And so most healers meme on it saying, why are you using Clemency? And I mean, you can make the argument, oh, Warriors is soft global cooldown, but it's the same premise that either you or the healer is going to have a nauseating amount of overhealing, and that is actually really not a good thing. Paladin spamming Clemency is actually even worse for a variety of reasons, like your MP bar is for Holy Spirit and Confiteor spam, but this isn't a Paladin video. But the main thing I want to say is it is akin to the same thing. And so that gets into... Actually, let's talk about Equilibrium. Equilibrium is a cure potency of 1200, bam, every 60 seconds. And likewise, you can see that was actually even higher, probably because this... Yeah, I threw on my old Stormblood rating crap. So, yeah. So what I have here is... whatever. But... main point is Equilibrium 1200, and so if I go to Gunbreaker, is that we have Aurora. And so Aurora, when we apply it to ourselves, is going to just be this trickle of heal. And so likewise, is it that big burst now? Oops, my macro is in the way. But what you're seeing is just an even spread of healing. And so Aurora grants regen to a target, cure potency of 200, duration 18 seconds, so duration of 18 seconds divided by 3, because you get a tick every 3 seconds, is going to be a total of 6 ticks, and so this equals to 1200 cure potency. The difference is delivery, and so in content like solo content, Warrior's Equilibrium with the burst might be more useful if you don't pre-plan, whereas the Gunbreaker's Aurora in solo content is just fine and it'll have the same effect if you pre-plan. Like, Warriors is a better, oh my gosh, things have just hit the fan, excuse me, button than the Gunbreakers for sure. But the difference is Warriors is going to be just this big burst all at once, just bam, whoops, of 3,146. And then if we go to the Gunbreaker, it has this trickle effect. And so this in and of itself is actually a big deal. And I know people are just going to be like, oh, you're mincing things and you're nitpicking. But the main thing is overhealing. And I think that that's something that people really underestimate. And so Warrior just being at a burst makes it more likely that after like a tank buster that you can recover in planned gameplay, where your other healer knows, okay, my Warrior's going to use Thriller Battle Equilibrium. But in other gameplay, if you use Aurora on yourself during any time, even before a tank buster, you get a smooth and steady curve out of healing. And that smooth and steady curve means that even if a healer immediately bursts you with things like XCOG or ADLO, Emergency Tactics ADLO, or Cure 2 or Benefic 2, you're going to have a much higher chance of getting something out of Aurora than you would if you were a Warrior using Equilibrium at the same time and getting all that overhealing. And so honestly, the delivery of some of these healing effects is actually really paramount. It's even a criticism I make against the Paladin with their Clemency ability, because with Clemency, it's just a burst all at once, along with other issues like it's on the global cooldown, it costs mana, and mana is going to be used for your thing, as we said before. But it's a burst. You are actively bursting, and again, burst is not the best way to go in my opinion because of healers with overhealing, because it's just like, if I'm on Scholar and I'm using all this and I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna use all this, and then at the same time as all that healing, it's just like it goes to waste, and that is so incredibly frustrating. And actually, to that point, let's just recap. So 1, 2, 3 into Storm's Path or Storm's Eye. So Storm's Path restores 250 HP each time. And if you go Storm's Eye, you don't get that heal. And so instantly, if I'm being super honest, this makes it so that the warriors 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2, 3, whichever of the two ending flavors of the 1, 2, 3 you have, if you pick Storm's Eye, you're gonna naturally have less of a consistent heal over time. And so that's one thing that I do think is a micro point. But when we're talking about a 10-minute fight with 7.5 divided by 7.5 seconds, this really does stack up, where it's just like that loss really is impactful. Whereas if we look at the Gunbreaker, we can see 1, 2, 3 every single time. It's a consistent 1, 2, 3 with them. And so this too, though, is going to activate every time. And so the Gunbreaker, every 1, 2, 3 combo that they do is going to be getting 300 potency, basically, of mitigation. But what I want to also emphasize here before I move on to the next point is that they get 150 potency of healing. And then if you read this tooltip, it also says combo bonus, that it creates a barrier which nullifies damage equaling HP restored. And so what you essentially have with this ability, Brutal Shell, is that you have this applies a shield onto you. So this Brutal Shell, and it says a highly effective defensive maneuver is nullifying damage. Well, okay, it's 150 potency, calm down. But the point that I want to say is that every single 1, 2, 3 rotation is that you can activate this, and that likewise, this is another instance where I really like the Gunbreaker just for its even flow of its healing and its mitigation. And that's one thing that I think maybe I just have a strong bias towards even flow and high predictability like that. But I really, really, really think that it is so powerful, because it's like with the warrior. Not only is it inconsistent, but again, you have another instance where you're getting overhealing. Because all of their Storm's Path is going to be 250 potency of healing, whereas the Gunbreaker divides it equally between healing onto themselves as well as a temporary shield. And so that temporary shield is going to be much more useful to you than if a healer is just spamming on you and you're at full health. This will do work. This Brutal Shell here, this will actually serve work to you. This will do something. And again, I know I've said the point 5 times, but over a 10-minute fight or in a Savage raid, that adds up. That really, really does add up. And so it even gets into the fact that we have 300 potency total mitigation from this between the heal and the shield for Gunbreaker, whereas the Warriors was only 250. And it's like even Warrior that's supposed to have all the self-healing actually kind of falls flat on that. And so that's a little bit sad on that angle. And so the next thing I want to talk about is Nascent Flash. This thing. This ability I was so excited for, but it's like you're seeing me click this right now, probably hearing it too, unfortunately. But this, you can't even use it in solo play. This is so frustrating. And so immediately I think to the Dragoon. And so they have an ability called Dragon Sight. I have it on special macros. So Dragon Sight here. I can use this on myself. I don't need a partner for this. And yet for the warrior, for whatever reason, I need a partner. And it is so annoying. Because, especially in solo play, like let's say that I do not have a healer. Okay, now I do want all that healing. Like let's say that I'm in a hunt train and that I really just cannot get a healer and that I'm tanking it. Or that I'm completely solo on my own. And let's say that I don't have my Chocobo, because obviously I can just use Gaia instead of a Chocobo. But let's say that I am not getting healing and that I have no one near me in a party. I can't use this. I can't heal myself. And so instantly, unlike the Dragoon, I'm feeling a bit like Like, I mean, yeah, I can use Thrill of Battle Equilibrium, but it's so frustrating to me, because it's just like, you know what, healing is supposed to be a big part of the warrior's kit, yet I just feel a little sad about that. But let's move on to the next point, because I think I've belabored that point quite long enough. So let's look at the warrior's cooldowns. Nascent Flash and Raw Intuition share the same cooldown timer, so I'm considering them the same thing. So 1. 2. Thrill of Battle is 2. 3 with Equilibrium. 4 with Vengeance. And so the warrior has 4 total job specific tanking cooldowns here. And so note, we're not even talking about the role actions where, yeah, you have Arm's Length, which is a good slow in very much underestimated ability. For the record, if you're not using this in dungeons, please start using it. It is super helpful if you have no other cooldowns. And then you also have Reprisal, and same thing, if you don't have cooldowns, totally use it. Like, as you can see, you don't even need a target. Bam. Reprisal is awesome. And Rampart, obviously. But we're not talking about those. We're talking specifically about the warrior cooldowns. And so basically 1, 2 of these, so Thrill of Battle and Equilibrium, are by default out of the box only can be used for pure healing. These are not really mitigation. So Thrill of Battle also does increase your HP restoration, obviously, but again, this is not mitigation in and of itself. It is something that you use after something, like post damage. So it's not pre, it's post damage effect, which there is definitely merit to, as I said, like in strategic play, absolutely. But another thing is that this will not be reducing how much damage you take when you get whacked. So we had 4 there. And another thing is that Nascent Flash and Raw Intuition share the same cooldown, and so Raw Intuition, if I use that, bam, that's down. But likewise, Nascent Flash is another healing one, and so potentially 3 out of the 4, so the only one being Vengeance for the warrior, is healing cooldowns. So only Vengeance is the one that is actually true mitigation, that is exclusively to the warrior. Everything else is tied to healing. Well, I mean, Raw Intuition too, of course. I don't want to be disingenuous, but you would normally, if you're playing a warrior, normally I'd suspect you'd use Nascent Flash until you realized, oh wait, our healer is overhealing me. But mind you, we get into the contrivance that got me into like a 20-minute whatever that was rant about, oh well, the healer will realize they're overhealing you and that you're using that, so they're gonna stop. But then you stopped, and then you started using Raw Intuition. Then the healer had to pick that up. Oh wait, but you died because the healer expected this, and then you weren't further. You get what I'm saying. I don't think that I need to belabor that point. So basically, the warrior heal, and doesn't have as much mitigation. Another thing that I want to say is that Thrill of Battle and Equilibrium, these 2 abilities, this increases maximum HP by 20 and restores you for equal. This heals you for 1,200. And everyone's like, duh. But my point that I want to make is that doesn't change if you have 20 mobs smacking you in the face. If you have a big pull in an expert roulette and you have 20 mobs smacking you in the face, it's Thrill of Battle's not all of a sudden going to be like, oh, holy schmackerels, we need to increase all the way to 50. Or Equilibrium's not going to be like, oh my god, we need to heal like 2,400. It's not going to do that. It's going to just do that amount regardless. So I'm pulling up the Gunbreaker, and let's just go through the specific cooldowns. So they have Camouflage, they have Heart of Stone, they have Nebula, and then Aurora. Actually, it might be easier if I show you this way rather than my tooltips. And so where do I have all that? So they have Camouflage, and so that is going to be damage reduction. And people really underestimate this ability. People are just like, oh, Camouflage, it's horrible. Basically, it's like Rampart, because you have that 50%, how to say it? Yeah, 50% parry rate. and then it reduces damage taken by flat 10%. So parry plus that, it's basically a rampart. It's really good. It's really underestimated. And then danger zone, nebula, and so this is the standard tank 30% damage reduction. You have Aurora, and then you have, goodness gracious, where was it? Oh, Heart of Stone. And so likewise, ooh, that even gets into another point that I'll bring up. I'll bring it up after. But with the Gunbreaker, you have 1, 2, 3 abilities that are just dedicated to mitigation. And likewise, someone can easily come to this video and make the argument of, oh, well, you're only looking at it from the one angle of, like, pre-mitigation's bad. And meanwhile, the Gunbreaker can't heal itself instantly up. Well, so it's bad. And I mean, is that a point? Absolutely. I'm not going to discredit that. But what I'm going to say is that in most things like Expert Roulette and Extreme Trials, I have a healer with me that is already ready to burst me. Like, if I think about just the different tanks, it's just like Paladin, aside from a Clemency spammer, Dark Knight and Gunbreaker are 3 of the 4 tanks, and so likewise make up the majority of the tanks. And so because of that, most healers are used to having to do that burst. And so with the Gunbreaker not being able to burst itself, it's a little bit more common for people. But I go on a tangent for that. But the point is, 3 of these abilities are as expected. And then Aurora, and everyone's going to be like, oh, but that's a heal. But as I said before, this is a trickle heal. So this is less likely to be burst off. Whereas if we look at the Warrior, there, this is a burst, this is a burst, and for the record, Thrill of Battle, look at how short that is. That's a 10-second duration. And so likewise, 10-second duration, and Nascent Flash is also a burst. It lasts 6 seconds. Let me just bring up the receipts. The receipts. This lasts, as you can see, to 6 seconds. So burst healing is because it's just like 6 seconds. You need to get in your 3 global cooldowns, like bam, bam, bam. And so yeah, there it is. So something like Camouflage that lasts 20 seconds, I honestly would prefer in almost every single situation to a burst heal. And Aurora is basically on the same cooldown timer, basically the same effect without the burst, and is a trickle. I'll prefer that almost every single time, just because you are usually paired with a healer that is used to that situation. And is Heart of Stone technically a bit weaker? Absolutely. And I'll get into that point in a short bit. But point is, Warriors cooldowns, job specific cooldowns, in my humble opinion and experience, unless you are with a very talented group that knows how to use that healing, is going to be vastly inferior almost every single time. Expert Roulette, doing Extreme Trials, and I mean, I'm not even shy from showing it. It's just like, I have like these Extreme Trial dragons. Like, I love spamming my Extreme Trials so much. That's some of my favorite content, and I can't think of a single time when I was playing Warrior that the healer seemed to be actually carrying if I was going to use Thrill of Battle Equilibrium. I can't think of it. It's just like, it's something where you need a really talented group to make use of that. So that was a lot of talk about overhealing. So the next thing I want to talk about is party utility, and this is going to be super duper important. So let's talk about Heart of Stone, and let's talk about Aurora. Obviously I just cast them on myself, totally realized that I don't have a party member with me. In fact, maybe I can go to the open world and have a chocobo. Sure, let's just go out here, just because I want to kind of like show the point and like be like, oh, this is what's going on with this. Likewise, we're already going a bit over the time that I wanted. But look at this beautiful chocobo. Wait, I can't cast it on it? There, good, I was able to. I was like, what? But in this instance, I can apply Heart of Stone onto my chocobo. And I'm gonna swap to Warrior again. So with the Warrior, Heart of Stone and Raw Intuition are basically interchangeable. But Raw Intuition can only be cast on the Warrior themselves. This isn't something that you can say cast on your chocobo or cast on your co-tank. And for the record, the way that raids have gone, the notion of main tank versus off tank is a bit more wishy-washy, because often there are tank swaps that basically force a main tank and an off tank to swap. I kind of go into much more detail and I think explain it much better than that in my tanking guides, but I'm sure that you get the gist of it. So Raw Intuition being a selfish ability, that's what I'm just going to call it, you can only use it on yourself, is kind of a downfall. And so Nascent Flash, let me bring up the tooltip here, is interesting. So Nascent Flash is an ability where it applies Nascent Glint onto a party member. And so Nascent Glint, again, kind of does a similar thing to Nascent Flash with the heal on yourself, but it is going to heal a party member as well as reduce their damage taken by 10%. And so you're getting a damage mitigation with this as well as the heal at the exact same time. And is that pretty good? Yeah, I'm not going to say it's bad, but it's at the same point of time, you're still falling prey to that overhealing effect, because this is the 6 seconds where you need to go all in, like just boom, boom, boom. And can that again be really good? Totally. But I think we once again get to the point where it's like with a strategic team, absolutely. And 10% mitigation is not all that amazing in and of itself. So of course we can apply that to our chocobo. You can see that it got an Ascent Glint. We have the 6 seconds of mitigation and then disappear. Whereas if I go to something like the Gunbreaker, I can do this to my chocobo. Oh, come on, let me cast it. Sorry, this is one of the downfalls of macros sometimes. So I can cast Heart of Stone on my chocobo. Then I can cast Aurora on it. And so likewise, you can see that I can have these 2 buffs at the same time. And so in my opinion, I have found it, just because of, again, that overhealing and that burst, I found being a off tank as the Gunbreaker so much easier than on the Warrior. Because another thing about the Warrior is that Nascent Flash and Nascent Glint are very, very, very much tied to you being in a burst phase, such as, like, you'd want to time it with something like Inner Release, where you'd be like, boom, and then you just like wreck a target essentially, and that's when it's the most optimal. And one of the problems with the Warrior with that, which I didn't even bring up before, but I think is a valuable point, is that if you're trying to heal up after something, you don't always have 2 charges of Fell Cleave or Infuriate or whatever stored up to use. Is it an ideal idea to plan it? Absolutely. But you don't always have it. Whereas with the Gunbreaker, and likewise, I should say, like, the difference between having that and not is huge. Like, let's look at this and let's. Oh, wait, my keys are not working. What? I can't use yet. Not sure what that's about. Oh, because I didn't use the. Sorry, it's one of those mornings. But basically, the healing difference is going to be quite huge. Let's see if I can. I might need to find a striking dummy. Sorry about the pause. I'm just trying to find a striking dummy that I can actually whack to show this example, while keeping my chocobo out. And these are the only ones that I can think of, so. Oh, someone else is even here. Okay. Very popular dummies. I that is completely sarcastic. So let's use it now. And so we got that. So the chocobo got healed by 100 something, about 2k. And not even for that. Note that 6 seconds is pretty short, and so did I mess up? I should have used Nascent Flash technically closer to that global cooldown when I started. So bad on me. But you can see that the healing was dramatically lower. It was like 2k for a maim. And so let's do this. And so we have about 2k, just a little under. Then, oh, it's not even, yeah. Couldn't quite catch that number. But basically significantly lower than you would probably hope for, especially considering that I am on a level 80 warrior. It's a little meh. So let's go into something like that, and then likewise fell cleave. Oh, wait, what's going on here? I'm not seeing my healing amount. But basically, the point that I'm trying to make at this point is that Nascent Glint is pretty good, but again, it really depends on what you're gonna do. So I'm not even gonna look in this test at the Chocobo. I'm just gonna look at myself again. Nascent Flash says that Nascent Glint is going to deal HP restoration 50% of what I see on myself. So I am going to, I don't know why I turned on tank stats. So I'm going to use this. Then I'm gonna fell cleave. Okay, we have 3.7 and then 2.6. So 3.7 is gonna be, let's say 2k. And then the other one was like 2.6, so that's roughly 1.3 or so. And so basically you get, it's very important to match it up to a burst window. And so just going back to the Gunbreaker, sorry, I know that test was like super prolonged, but Gunbreaker, I always have a very consistent healing dump that I can put into a party member. Is it going to be as bursty as Nascent Glint can be? No. No. And no. I want to be super clear about that. But again, you don't need to worry so much about timing it with burst windows and this and that and that and this. And in fact, if I might get in trouble for saying this, but I'd even argue that there is a good merit to putting Aurora off of cooldown rather than timing it with specific scenarios, because Aurora, you will always be getting some benefit out of it. Usually, obviously boss transitions, obviously, but if say a boss is just auto attacking and it isn't just using a tank buster, it's just like you will still get something out of that Aurora use. And so if I'm just like bam to my Chocobo, which doesn't want to do it, okay, but if I do that, it's just like I'm still technically gonna get some use out of it if these silver wolves were hitting me. And so, yeah, there's that. And so now let's talk about Holmgang. So Holmgang is something that I have a love-hate relationship with. So you can see that its cooldown is 240 seconds. And so that is actually low. Let's pull up the Gunbreaker. Gunbreaker's Super Belied is 360. And then Paladins, 420, right? Yep. 420. 420. I'm Canadian, so I can say that, right? It's fine here, at least. But what I can say, though, is that 420 seconds is a dramatic difference between their voice crack and everything than 240. Like, this is huge difference. And so Holmgang is a little bit more restrictive. So basically, there are pros and cons to it, is how I want to say it. Is that 204 seconds is significantly less. Absolutely. But unlike Hallowed Ground, it doesn't actually prevent damage from coming in, and so it's a little less effective than that. And I mean, people might be like, oh, but the Gunbreaker actually lowers your HP down to 1. Let's make this a meme tier video. Let's piss this. Oh, it's on cooldown. Well, that's too long of a cooldown for me to wait 6 minutes, as you can see. I'm not doing that. But basically, Super Belied will lower your HP to 1. So warriors will not do that, which is definitely a blessing. But compared to the Paladin's cooldown, which as you can see, the Gunbreakers is 6 minutes cooldown, so I'm not even going to try for that. But what you can see here is that 240 is significantly less. It's like 4 minutes or something like that. Yeah, that should be 4 minutes versus like 6 minutes with the Gunbreaker, and even higher for the Paladin. And so warrior can use theirs more frequently, but they can still take damage. Like, let's say that I was tanking all of these knights and wolves, and then I use this. A healer could try and spam heals into me, but if they weren't out healing the damage, I would still be at 1 HP and basically die essentially after. So that would still be a very bad situation to be in, for sure. And so the difference is with Paladin, while it might be a longer cooldown, the Paladin is essentially impervious to all of the damage coming in. It's just like, huh, I have used Hallowed Ground, I laugh in your face. And it is really, really handy. Likewise, any tank invulnerability is and should be used for cheesing mechanics. I think that that's one of the best uses of it, honestly. But even when you're just in an expert roulette and your healer is just really not attentive, Hallowed Ground, excuse me, or Super Belied with the Gunbreaker are going to be much more useful in my experience, because even Super Belied, you can wait until you're, say, at like 20,000 HP and be like, this scares me, and then you only lose like 19,999 HP, but you become impervious to damage after that with the Gunbreaker Super Belied. Whereas Paladin just it's super long cooldown, but ridiculously effective. Like, you don't need to worry about basically anything with it. It is like pop and go. And so the warrior though can get beat down. So let's talk about the both perk and, well, we've already talked about the downfall, so let's talk about the perk about warriors. And so the warriors being on a lower cooldown means that you can more openly use this for different mechanics. And so at 240 seconds, excuse me, this ability can be used much more often, like almost like twice the amount that the Paladins can. Not quite, but pretty darn close. And so if you are in a boss like, could I for Titania? It's been a while. I think for Titania, sorry if I'm wrong, but she does a bunch of different Fey Light spams, if I'm recalling the name. And note that I was spamming Titania way before I was going to become a content creator, so I definitely do not have the footage. I wish I did now, but I didn't know that I'd even be doing YouTube videos back then. But I'm pretty sure that I could, for her Fey Light spams, cheese that mechanic not only once for the first time, but also the second time with Holmgang, because the cooldown was so low. And this was actually very useful, because sometimes you have a co-tank with you that just isn't agreeable. They're just like, oh, doing invulnerability, oh, what do you think I am? A peasant? You think it's a meme, but I've heard it before. That's your job, you're the main tank. But basically with the lowered cooldown, it allows me to do it more. But here's the reality. In a structured group, which I have been praising the warrior for being good in, a structured group will be able to probably make use of this some more times. It's like for like ultimate raids where there's more frequent tank busters, but for savage content even, you will notice that you will be like a warrior, excuse me, and then you'll have like a Dark Knight, Paladin, or Gunbreaker co-tank. You should be having one person take one tank buster, then the other tank swap with you and take the other, then swap back for the other tank buster, and then swap back for the other. It should be an even back and forth, and in theory, you should have enough time between the cooldowns that something like the Gunbreaker Super Belied here. See, it's even still on cooldown. Like, see, lowered cooldowns, pretty hefty. But this thing, should theoretically be off of cooldown by the time that your co-tank has tanked a tank buster, and now it's back to you. Theoretically. Of course, there are fights that will counter that, but theoretically. And so, does the lowered cooldown necessarily help the warrior? No, not really. And so from there, we are going to be getting into a discussion about Overpower and Mithril Tempest. And so for this, I want mobs that are a bit beefier than this. So I'm actually going to go to thinking where is good enough that I won't get chewed up, but I can make a good example. Sure, let's go here. So this one says Overpower is going to be does damage in front of you with a cone. And then the other one is going to do damage in front of you with a circle. And I'm going to have a few different examples of this. And let's see a good area to pick up some mobs with. So I'm just trying to do as many live examples as possible, because a few things suck more than when you have someone just blah 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 from their house and it's just like, show me what you mean. So here we're gathering up these butterflies, and I want Rara I'm a Dragon to go away. Shoot. Because he's actually dealing too much damage to them. So I'm waiting for all of these to eventually get to me. Actually, this is enough. So cone. Are you noticing? Are you picking up what I'm feeling? And I mean, technically I could move them back, but you notice how I wasn't hitting those buzzflies? Or let's do the opposite direction. So now I'm hitting these two buzzflies, but I'm not hitting the wind sprite. And this is the issue, and I know that this is a contrived example. I mean, obviously, I can pull them all this way. Oh no, it's going away. I really need a blooper reel for some of my videos. You would not believe how often this happens, but basically, with cone, it hits in front of you. And while some people can make the argument of, oh, it's really good if things are far away, most tanks do circle. So you saw how that hit behind me? And so our issue with the warriors, we're not only just cone, we're also circle. And so, like, if there aren't enough mobs here, I'm trying to think of where there would be more mobs. The issue with these is, like, these are big, bulky mobs and really spread out. Maybe I should go to, like, Eureka or something. But, like, one thing that people say is that can cones reach further? And that's just yes, obviously. Like, we hit pretty far here. So let's see if I can hit you from the same. So I can clearly hit it from here with the cone. And is that good? Oh my god, absolutely. Because look at this circle. Like, we're not hitting it with Mithril Tempest. This thing is just going into the aether. This is worthless to us, but we can hit it with the cone. And so, can it be good for reeling up mobs? Oh my gosh, absolutely. And I mean, technically you can pull like that, and then you can hit them with both of them. But the issue becomes, what if you have pulled them back, and then now you can't hit the furthest ones? So let's say that we have mobs here. If you see with my cursor, I'm trying to make a triangle. So we have a cone like this. And we're trying to hit all of these mobs with it. So by nature, the warrior is cone, circle. And likewise, we can see that the circle ain't gonna hit a lot of them. But the issue is when you have like 10 mobs in this triangle, some of them are going to be really close up. Some of them are going to be really close up in your face. Like, they're going to be like, rah, this tank. But some of them will be a little bit further in the back. And so the issue when you do a triangle pull, and so this, I owe all of you an apology for the tank video, by the way. This is not the video to do it in, but when you do what I call a triangle pull, and you're basically dragging them like that, and you're basically forming a triangle with them like this, and you're dragging them, then you can go in with the cone. Totally, absolutely. I do it on Machinist. Machinist is primarily cone based, and Machinist is currently my main for raiding and that, and so totally a thing. But the thing is, they get backed up in that triangle. Like you have this peak near yourself, and then the triangle spreads out further. And so that gets into a very frustrating situation where, yes, I can hit them with this, but now I can't hit them with this. You see, and yeah, some of the closer ones, like as you just saw that water sprite, it just got wrecked. Well, it will get wrecked soon. But that likewise wasn't doing anything really, or rather it was hitting this close one, but this other one was like, lol, WTF. But it's like, again, it's just like I can hit them with this, but in a dungeon like an expert roulette, you want the consistency, because it's like bam, and yeah, I hit it, but now I don't have that because it's just inconsistent. Whereas if I go Dark Knight, unable to change, why? Okay, Dark Knight, circle. Circle. Oh, come on. Circle. Circle. And for the heck of it, oh, it won't let me because I'm not in combat. Okay, and circle. And then let's do this. Circle. And then circle. And so likewise, we could see that those are circles. I need to run away from the choo-choo because my gun blade that I have equipped is very out of date. Okay, come on, come on, come on, come on. My main oh, it's probably the damage over time effect. Sorry. Why am I not able? Okay, my goodness. And then circle, circle, circle. And that is the issue. Oh, circle. Holy circle. Literally the holy circle. I'm gonna get cancelled someday for my ridiculousness, I know it. But configure. I didn't have enough MP, but this is a circle too. Take my word for it. Whoops. But the main issue is that it's just like the warrior is the one that is very inconsistent, and it's just like, sure, let's take a machinist. Oh, come on. Machinist? Pew pew in a cone. Pew pew in a cone. Pew pew in a cone. it's no secret. Or like, oh, those are fate mobs. Oh no, this one isn't. Let's see if I can lightly whack you. Pew pew in a cone. So it's just like the warrior, on the other hand, is just that inconsistent. Or it's like even with black mage, it's just like flare, circle, circle. Circle around the target, but I should say around the target, circle, around the target, circle, around the target, circle. The warrior being this different, some people can make the argument, absolutely, and that's the argument that I just fully acknowledged was, yes, you can pull further, totally, absolutely, yes, no denying, but it is just like going back and forth and back and forth. As I demonstrated earlier with the water sprites, it just, it's not the same. It's just, and then what else did I want to talk about? So yeah, let's talk about initiation. Actually, I have a scheme. I have a plan on how I'm going to do this. So let's do Dark Knight. I don't even know why this doesn't have gloves. As I said, my inventory is a hot mess. And so let's talk about initiation. Bam. And then let's go. Bam. And everyone's probably just like, WTF, is this another blooper? We know that you're being ridiculous, but you're gonna see it in a second. And likewise, these have shared cooldowns, right? Don't they? Yeah, they do. Darn it. Well, I'm not gonna wait that long for it, but we can technically pull as this. Isn't it interesting? Oh yeah, now I can show that this is circle. Circle. But the warrior. Onslaught. Let's talk about this. So Onslaught rushes to target and delivers an attack with potency of 100. This costs beast gauge, so even though this is in my charge slot, I can't actually charge, which is super duper annoying. And it's just like, theoretically, could I do inner release and then just charge like that and then bam? Absolutely. But you know what I just had to do was I had to use inner release to do it. And for the record, is this an ability that I totally recommend you use inner release for? Or use during inner release? Absolutely, because you know what? When you are in one of those burst phases, you use every single cooldown that you have. Absolutely. Use Onslaught during inner release. Absolutely, absolutely. Or if you are in a position where you do need the mobility and you think that the trade-off is good, then use it. But like, as you can see, that's not a decision that any other tank needs to make. Like, I just whacked it twice with Paladin. It is the same for Gunbreaker, Dark Knight, and Paladin. You get 2 charges of a dash, but to add insult to injury, they also deal 200 potency. So warriors dealt 100 potency, and likewise, you can probably guess that when we are talking about something like a Gunbreaker opener, we're involving its dash here with the 200 potency, because that is 400 potency just laying there in wait. And likewise, it is off of the global cooldown. It costs nothing. And so I can just whack. And then if I really want to troll the step Zo, then I can do that. And only warrior has to worry about it costing beast gauge as well as not being able to spam it. And so is Onslaught a part of its normal rotation? Yes, because when you use the inner release, see, I just weaved it just like that. Absolutely. But the problem is, outside of it, inner release, it and extremely niche mobility situations, it is not optimal to use, because that costs 20 beast gauge. So guess what else costs 20 beast gauge? This thing, Upheaval. So Upheaval deals 450 potency damage, and so for the record, Fell Cleave does 590. So does Fell Cleave deal more? Absolutely, but Fell Cleave costs 50. So you can run the math yourself, but, and I did at one point, but the numbers escape me, is essentially though, 450 for 20 potency is going to be your absolute highest benefit to cost ratio with the warrior's beast gauge. Because it's like, when I do this and I smack this war sprite, I have 100 beast gauge right now. And so I need to choose wisely. Do I want 2 Fell Cleaves, so 50 and 50? Or do I want a Fell Cleave? I hope it doesn't kill it. My dreams are memes. Or do I want to use an Upheaval? And so you saw that Upheaval, well, it didn't one-shot the step Zo. It left 30 gauge. And so now I do my 1, 2, 3 combo. 1, 2, 3, and then I have enough for another Fell Cleave to deliver to this friendly Zo. And so whenever it comes down to it with the Warriors kit, it's like you need to make decisions on some of these skills, and this is a decision no one else has to make. And likewise, because it is hidden behind beast gauge, unless you are popping inner release pre-pull like this, you can't dash in like what I just did. You as you saw, I needed to literally use inner release in order to even do that. And so super duper duper inconvenient, no doubt in my mind. And so that kind of brings me to the point where I want to say that yes, have I brought up a lot of negative things? Yes, but it's kind of, I'll leave it to the end of the video, but I want to say that this comes from a place of wanting to see change and reworks. and things improve, because I do love the warrior. I love its fantasy, I love what it represents. But now it's time to get into the support utility. And so Nascent Glint is great, but let's talk about some raid wide. And so Shake It Off basically allows you to give a bubble to the entire team. And so it is nice in that you basically don't need to, how to say it, you don't need to pre-plan for it. Like, let's take the Paladins. And this is something that I have definitely as a criticism for Paladins. So I use Divine Veil on myself. Basically, it's the Paladin shield. And then this. And then when you get a heal on yourself with Divine Veil on, then it is applied to your allies. Likewise, Paladin also has a ton of other utility, of course, and they also have cover. And so, really super useful. But in terms of things, the Warriors kind of makes me a little sad, because it's like, yeah, I just popped it like that. That was way easier to do than the Paladins. I found that the Paladins' utility sometimes is very unwieldy. I'll use that term. But with Shake It Off, it says it dispels Thrill of Battle, so this buff. It dispels Vengeance, so this buff. And then it dispels Raw Intuition. And so, in case anyone didn't notice, there was a little bit of an inconsistency here. So Raw Intuition gets dispelled, but not Nascent Flash. This is just one of the things that makes me really wonder, or feel it's just like the Warrior hasn't gotten the love it really deserves. It's just like, you know what, why isn't it also including Nascent Flash? Because Raw Intuition and Nascent Flash are interchangeable. And I mean, Nascent Flash, I mean, I get it, because it's like, oh, you're using that as a party utility to heal someone, but it's like, I'm being punished for using party utility to use party utility. But let's get into a little bit more. So dispels Thrill of Battle, Vengeance, and Raw Intuition. Increases the damage absorbed by 2% for each effect. So what we have is 15% barrier, and then let's say that we're adding 6. Let's simplify all of that math. Let's say that we're adding 6%. And so what we have in this instance is basically that we are getting a 21% shield, assuming that you pop this, and this, and then this. And as you saw, all of that just went poof for 21% shield. And so that also gets into another thing, is Thrill of Battle increases your maximum HP by 20%. Shake It Off gives a barrier equal to 15% of your maximum HP. But the thing is, it dispels Thrill of Battle, so it dispels Thrill of Battle, this buff, but gives you 2% back. And would that work out? Because Thrill of Battle gives you 20%, and then Shake It Off gives you 15% shield. Oh. So technically, it is cutting off, actually, like 0.5%, because what you'd expect with 15%, or would it be 0.5%? No, it would be 3%. So 20% of your maximum HP from Thrill of Battle, Shake It Off shield for 15%. So if it was Shake It Off for 10%, that would be 2%. Shake It Off is 15% though, so it's 3%. And so technically you're actually losing a theoretical percent off of this. Again, probably in practice nobody cares. But I want to say that that's just another thing where it's like, I feel punished. But yeah, I would be remiss to not say that. But one thing about the Warriors thing is it's just like, let's take this 15%. Or actually, let's just go ham, and let's say that we have both of these and Vengeance, and so we're at 21%. And so what we're gonna say is we're gonna make the math a little bit simpler and say that this is 20%. So we're at what is it? 147,000. Let's say it's 150,000. So this would theoretically be a 20,000 shield if we were at 100. So this is theoretically a 30,000 shield, assuming that you've popped all of these things. Otherwise, we would be looking at a 15, roughly 20, what would it be? It'd be 15 times 100, oh my god, 15,000, okay. And then divide that by 2, so we have 7.5 times 5, added to 15. So we'd get roughly 22.5 thousand shield. And so this gets into questions that we start needing to ask about, is that going to be more beneficial than something like, oh, curses, it's on the same cooldown timer, than something like Dark Missionary that reduces magic damage taken by self and nearby party members by 10%. And I think that this is kind of worth exploring, or like, let's take the Gunbreaker. The Gunbreaker has Heart of Light that does the same thing basically. And there's a slight difference that I do want to bring up. That basically the barrier, once it's gone, it's gone. And so the barrier is really good for massive big bursts in my experience. But let's take something like Eden Savage, the Ionoclasm or whatever. Basically the one with the birds. Right at the very end of the ad phase, when you have the blast assist, where it's just the blast assist is basically spamming its AoE over and over again, and you're just like, blast assist, can you please stop doing this? You, in my experience, will probably get more out of Heart of Light, I think, because you have repetitive bam, 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 bam over and over again. It is just like a volley of damage, and you want to reduce it as much as you can. But that does get into like really tight theory, but overall, in my opinion, I'm feeling that that's kind of an interesting point. I think that the Warrior's Shield is pretty decent, but those few quality of life things I think are really, really painful. And actually that kind of brings us to the end of the video. It's just like, I think that I've said everything of my thoughts, and surprisingly in a more concise but more exampled manner, because the last video I didn't have as many examples. And overall, this video is just made with the hope to like raise awareness and just be like, you know what, I really love the Warrior. It was actually the first job that I did a ultimate guide on before I even knew that I would do ultimate guides on. And I mean, I am a longtime follower of Asmongold, even when he was making original World of Warcraft Warrior guides. And so Warrior has had a very, very important place of my heart for years. Honestly, it's one of the jobs that even attracted me to play this game in the first place. And so yeah, this is made out of a place of love and care. And I know that there was a lot of negativity, but I think that it's important to kind of like showcase these. But along with negativity and critique, I think that it is important to kind of look at the other end of the spectrum, which is going to be my next video, which I'm not a game designer. I'm not going to pretend I'm a game designer, but it's just going to be me kind of throwing ideas out where we could maybe look at ways to improve the current Warrior toolkit, to maybe make things a little bit better. Because I believe that even though I'm not a game designer, I think that any critique should be given with a little bit of like ideas, or like, oh, okay, well, you just hate this. Well, no, I love it. And so I'm just thinking that maybe some ideas that I could just volley out in the next video. But anyhow, this video has probably gone way longer than I have anticipated, and so I'm gonna just cut this off here. And likewise, just as a quick recap, is that I can probably do in 2 seconds, is Storm's Eye buff, very difficult to keep up and maintain, no UI icon for it. AoE I find very frustrating because you have the combination of a cone and a circle. The cone, is there advantages to it? Sometimes, but most of the time I'm finding that I'm missing mobs with my AoE, which is frustrating even when I'm using proper pulling strategies. And then in terms of Shake It Off, I find it that we lose some of the percentage, very small percentage mind you, from using Thrill of Battle and then using it. We don't have the benefit from Nascent Glint, and so while we can pop all these, it's boom, then it's all gone. And is it a bulky shield? Absolutely. But at the same point in time, you have just blown all of your cooldowns for that shield. And then Holmgang, well, it has a lower cooldown. Its cooldown in gameplay like Titania Extreme, if you're with a co-tank that knows what they're doing, is going to generally not be as useful. Equilibrium I don't like as much as Gunbreaker's Aurora because it is a burst instead of a trickle over time. The charge, only having one charge and being beast gauge bound, is not fun. I mean, this is like every other tank has their charges baked into their rotation. Healing effects like Nascent, Flash, and Equilibrium are very useful in high strategic gameplay with very very strategized team play. Nascent Flash I can't use on myself when I'm currently solo. I literally need to spawn an ally to use. And so that's a huge downfall. Another downfall about that is in team play that we need to essentially have it where we're lining up Nascent Flash with our burst window, because the difference between a Nascent Flash with inner release and using Fell Cleave and not is incredibly high. It's like Heavy Swing, Maim, Storm's Path will simply not heal you anywhere close to the same dimension as inner release with Nascent Flash paired. It's going to be a very, very, very big difference, to say the least. Another issue is that most of the warrior cooldowns are going to be heal based. And while they do have job based cooldowns like arm's length and where is it? Yeah, reprisal, rampart. It's just like every tank job gets them, and in comparison to something like the Gunbreaker, that is significantly less. And kind of a more personal note is that I just don't find the 1, 2, 3 of needing to do Storm's Eye once every 30 seconds is actually engaging. I don't actually find that engaging. Mind you, not everything needs to be like my ultimate summoner guide where we have like Phoenix phases and Bahamut phases and just like super complicated interwoven gameplay. And while I love that stuff, it's like not everything needs to be it. But I do find that this just adds more frustration than anything. It's just like now I'm just repeating myself from what I said earlier in the video, but like as I showcased earlier on, it should always be just that easy. It shouldn't. It's like for a persistent buff. It's like, especially as someone who plays Dark Knight and Warrior, it's just like it's frustrating to me because it's just like the difference in maintaining your buff and just quality of life is just like so high, I feel. And even there I just used an ability like this Salted Earth thing, and Warrior, it's just like it turns basically into 1 2 3 1 2 3. Oh, upheaval spam. It's not upheaval spam, Fell Cleave spam with upheaval. And but anyhow, I am gonna end this video here, and I am going to be coming out with my ideas on how we could potentially improve the Warrior in a video very shortly after, probably tomorrow. I'm gonna do whatever I can to make it for tomorrow. And I hope that everyone can forgive me. I know that there are a lot of huge Warrior fans here. Trust me, I'm one. This video, do you really think that I would spend like 4 or 5 hours thinking? My god, way more than that thinking. But 5 hours like recording, throwing out, recording, throwing out, recording, throwing out, if I didn't love the Warrior? Please, nobody have time for that, especially not me with everything going on. Oh my god. But yeah, this comes from a place of love, and I'm really, really hoping that people can see that and not as bashing. And again, I should end this video, and I'm pretty sure I started it, let's hope that that was in this take and not just the last take, that obviously warrior can clear any content, obviously, but the warrior, I really think, can use a lot of quality of life improvements. I think that there is so much to this class fantasy that we haven't seen realized yet. I think that there is so much good that can be done. And I want to say one thing explicitly, that I have explicitly avoided talking about FF logs and damage numbers, because to be honest, my concerns with this class aren't damage numbers. I don't care as much. It's just like the tanks are so equal in damage. Obviously the Gunbreaker's leading. Anyone can pull it up and be like, oh, the Gunbreaker's doing this much more. Well, yeah, but that's not my issue. It's things like the concerns that I brought up earlier about like quality of life things that really are bugging me, because numbers change. Numbers will change from patch to patch. Different gear sets, like let's say that we have a gear set that favors a warrior more than a gunbreaker, or like let's take black mage's example for this tier. They don't really have gear that facilitates a spell speed plus crit build that nicely, and so you're kind of seeing some choose to go a little bit more into one or the other. But I totally digress now. I'm talking about black mage, but it definitely comes from a place of love and not hate. And yeah, I hope that everyone is having a fantastic day, and likewise, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you made it to the end of the video, you are fantastic and awesome and glorious and wonderful and super appreciated. Thank you so very much. Truly thank you so much. Anyhow, that is all for this video. Take care and hope to catch you in the next one. Take care.